I don't know that I have that. I'll try and pull that off like you would. All right. So we're missing a couple. Okay. All right. Shall we? Let's start Proverbs this morning. Surprise, surprise. Proverbs 25:28. Last verse of chapter 25. 25:28. Somebody read that. 25:28.
Like a city that is broken into and without walls is a man who has no control over his spirit.
All right, like a broken down city, a defenseless city with no walls is a man who has no control over his spirit. Turn to 1632. Go to your left. Someone read that for us. 1632. What character quality are we talking about in these two proverbs? That self-control, right? The ability to control, in chapter 25, verse 28, your spirit, your ruach, right? It's not limited to just your inward spirit, but it's the idea of your body, the ability to control your urges, your unctions, the things that your body desires to do that may not be real helpful for you, right? And in chapter 16, verse 32, that's likened to, man, it's at times harder to control your spirit than it is to capture a city. Like, for those of you that have fought what St. Francis of Assisi called brother ass, your body, the unctions that your body has, like, it is difficult at times. Can you think through people in the media right now that have a problem controlling their spirit, their bodies? I can think of a particular leader that 140 characters a day can ruin his entire leadership ability. He does a lot of things that I like and a lot of things that I don't, Mr. Trump. But boy, if somebody would just take away his iPhone and his Twitter rights, that would be super handy. There's days that, man, he responds, it seems like out of his flesh, and I don't want to disrespect him. I appreciate the office, but there are days I'm like, oh, buddy, you would make a lot more friends if you would just put your phone down, right? And control your urges at times. Who else comes to mind as you think through people, whether it's pride or anger or sex or power, that just you see that on display and the inability to control their spirit? Who comes to mind? Samson? Okay. You guys are on the Bible. Good for you. You guys remember the old football player Ricky Williams? Nope, he's older. Played for the Miami Dolphins for a while. Prior to that, he was at, I think, the University of Miami. He was an amazing running back, absolutely amazing running back, but he decided, I want to smoke pot a lot more than I want to play football. And literally, he quit playing football because he wanted to hang out and smoke pot. That was his thing. And he was, I mean, the guy was legit. He was amazing, but he just kind of, I'm out, right? You see it all over, right? Just for people that just can't, that cave to their lower urges. Did you guys have to read the Iliad and the Odyssey in school growing up? You guys remember the story of Odysseus when he goes by the island of the Sirens? I forget what book it's in. And all around this island, there's these women that call to you, right? And that the urge to men to go see them is overwhelming to the point where they literally cannot control themselves. And all along the rocks next to where the Sirens are on this island are just dashed ships that have crashed into this island because they have no self-control. And he recognized it about himself. He's like, I'm not going to end up any different than any other man. So he told his men, I want you to strap me to the mast of the ship. And the rest of you are going to put wax in your ears so that you can't hear their call. And I don't care what I say to you in the moment about how bad I want to stop or how bad we need to go over there. Do not listen to me, because everything in that moment that comes out of my mouth is going to be babble. It's going to be useless, right? And he recognized that about himself. And lo and behold, he got to go by the island and hear the call of the Sirens, and it was indeed irresistible. And he begged his men to stop and to go see him, and they didn't, right? So they all had wax in their ears. But this is not a new thing, right? We all have urges in our bodies that if we're not careful will destroy us. As I mentioned that to you, all of us know what those unctions are within us, and we need to be deadly honest about what those are and avoid those things and exercise self-control. Because if not, according to Proverbs 25:28, we are like a city without walls. It is just a matter of time. You are a turtle on its back. You are completely defenseless. And there will be a day that those urges will kill you if we're not careful, okay? So know them, be aware of them, viciously uproot sin, as the old Puritans used to say in your life. We all have them, all have those things, and we just need to be honest about what they are and exercise self-control, okay? I struggle with that with my tongue at times, like wanting to speak and knowing that I shouldn't, and it literally feels like there's a dragon that wants to come out of me. I'm like, Mike, stop. Like, think. Like, don't speak. And sometimes it's passion, which is good, and sometimes it's just my flesh wanting to speak. I got to put it in a freaking headlock and beat it for a while and say, shut up. You're going to submit to the Spirit. If not, you're going to submit to me. I'm going to sit on your head. But think about that, all right? That is not a character quality that we want to exhibit. When we think about godliness, one of the fruits of the Spirit is self-control, a demonstration of godliness and walking with the Spirit among a list of other godly-driven qualities is self-control. Okay, so let that quality mark you, not so much this, all right? Thoughts on that? Since you guys are so full of great examples of people that don't do this well this morning, other than Samson. Did you guys see, by the way, there's a trailer for the new Samson movie?
Yes. It looks good. What?
It looks unbiblical is what it looks, but whatever, so, yeah. Samson's a guy that we continue to hail as this great hero.
There's been some flops. That,
And I'm not speaking to the quality of the movie. I'm speaking to how they portray Samson. Samson is awful, and they portray him as this hero. And it's unfortunate that because he's strong, and he's good-looking, and he's Fabio, and we portray him as this guy that is super godly, and he's a disaster.
It says in the beginning, like, I don't know why I'm defending this movie, but they say he's like, God has chosen or whatever. And he's like, this is God's man. He's like, but it's not mine. It's like, no, like they portray like.
Let's read Samson in the Bible, and then we'll find out what you guys think about him. So, I haven't seen the movie. It may be great. The trailer looks like you made a little bit too much of him. I don't know.
We want to see it together, Eric.
Yeah. We had a class movie experience one time that went really, really bad, so I took everybody to go see Exodus, Gods and Kings.
Oh, gosh, that's amazing.
For the first 15 minutes, I was like, okay. And then I went, oh, no, I'm sorry. I just wasted everybody's money. All right, Book of Judges, shall we? Let's pray and read and dive back in here. Oh, Lord, we pray for your grace over our lives as we seek to study your word and become transformed to look more like Jesus. God, we recognize that in our worlds that we live in, that there are times that we lack the qualities necessary. We don't have them at all, to be honest with you, Lord. But there are times that we lack the ability to submit to the Spirit. And God, I pray for each of us as we journey through life and we deal with temptations and just all that life throws at us, that you would help us to be men and women that are marked by self-control, that are marked by the ability to recognize in the heat of the moment and discern the difference between the flesh and the spirit, and that we would choose to walk with you, that we would listen to that still small voice within us that speaks and guides and directs us. Would you give us the ability to do that? And Father, as we look at the judges of the past, men and women, God, that are going to step up and rule and at times lead a nation into great victory that you're going to use for the purpose of godliness in your midst, and there are times that they're going to be utter disasters. Father, would we learn from both sides of that coin of what that looks like to walk with you and what it looks like to walk in the flesh. So God, teach us this morning, we pray. In Christ's name, amen. All right, so we are in the book of Judges. We started last week. Theme of the book of Judges is failure. All right, big fat F, failure, okay, total failure. We saw the kind of the cycle at the beginning, kind of the idea that will continue to carry us through each one of these judges is the completion of yet another cycle, and each one of those cycles is a downward spiral, and it's going to get, again, worse and worse and worse as we move through. If you had to give me a theme verse in the book of Judges, what would it be? Every man did what was right in his own eyes. The last verse of the book, right, 21:26. Everybody does what's right in their own eyes. It is a country that is led by what we think is right, not driven from an external source of the Word of God. Sounds very familiar to the day and the culture that we live in. If we continue to abide by that, boy, you can see the trajectory of this nation. It's going to end in doom. Okay, Judges ends poorly. It is black, it is dark, it is rainy, it is Seattle. Okay, sorry, Seattle. That's the idea. Okay, so we started chapters 1 and 2. We see all that's happening in there. We got into our first judge, Othniel, in chapter 2, saw his beginnings, right? This godly man that begins to rule well. And remember, as we look through these judges, we start on the full left-hand side in chapters 3 through 16 with pretty good, okay? And we're going to see a couple pretty good rulers today. So Othniel we looked at last week. Ehud, the handicapped left-handed man, we'll finish up his story today. We're going to see Deborah lead today, a woman judge, the only woman judge. She is awesome. Okay, the minivan soccer mom, she is rad. You'll like her. And then we're going to get into Gideon, and there's going to begin to be this kind of like, looks pretty good. And all of a sudden there's these things mentioned that you're like, well, what's that about? This is odd. Like, what's going on within the nation? Okay, and again, this downward spiral will get clearer and clearer. Okay, so we'll get into Gideon, maybe into Jephthah this morning as well, but we'll go from there. Okay, so chapter 3, we found ourselves studying Ehud, right? This different judge, right? We saw the Moabites that were oppressing Israel in chapter 12 and following. Verse 12 and following, and all that was happening in there, and that God's going to use this left-handed, probably handicapped kid to, he's going to feign weakness to show his strength through Ehud, right? And he came across Eglon, this fat king. Funny story, ends up shoving an 18-inch dagger into this king's belly that doesn't come out the other side, so you get a good visual of how big this king was, right? And he guts this guy. And there's some funny parts to the story, right, as he kind of leaves this king dying, right, as he's gutted him on the top of his roof chamber. And his guards, as Ehud's walking out, just kind of leave him to be and think, well, I guess he's just relieving himself because it smells bad. And they move on, right? So Ehud escapes. And there's some funny, commentary here as Ehud is leaving, as this king is upstairs dying. Look at verse 26, as Ehud now exits the premises after murdering this king. Look at 3:26. Read that. Why would that be mentioned, that he passed by the idols? Okay. The culture, absolutely. That's what they're worshiping. What's the humor in that? Ehud, this handicapped man, just killed the most powerful man in their nation. And their gods didn't do a dang thing. That's the power of idols. It's a commentary on the foolishness of what we choose to worship at times. These gods can do nothing to deliver them. And yet, God, our God, is delivering the nation by a left-handed, handicapped guy. He can use anybody in strength or in weakness. God is going to deliver his nation. And regardless of how sinful the nation gets, God is going to keep his covenant, and he is able to deliver the people from the most powerful nations of the day that have the strong armies. And we're going to see camels and warriors and iron chariots like locusts in the sky. We're going to see that they're going to go up against enemies that they have no business winning against, and God's going to do it. So their idols can do absolutely nothing. And yet Israel continues to reject their God and turn back to these idols that are absolutely powerless. It is a frustrating, gut-wrenching story as you think about it from our perspective, as we look through, again, this quick movement through sometimes centuries of history. But that's the commentary there. So he leaves. Let's keep going down in verse 27, and let's watch this man deliver the nation. 3:27. So this kind of nobody guy does one courageous act, and as a result, he rallies now an entire group of people. Verse 29, they struck down that time 10,000 Moabites, all robust and valiant men. No one escaped. Verse 30, Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land was undisturbed for 80 years. For 80 years, they worship Yahweh. What was the turning point of this whole thing? One man, one choice to do what was right. And the entire tide of the nation changed. Don't forget that. Your decision, big or small, significant or insignificant, your position in life, your decisions at times can turn the tide of a nation. And this guy's courage to step up and to do what was right, to put down idolatry and to turn the nation back to Israel for 80 years makes a difference in that land. Yeah, Chris?
You know, when it says the land had peace for 80 years, we automatically assume it's because there was not some great sin or turning against God and stuff. Like, I'm just curious what that actually looks like, because I can't go like an hour, 2 hours without sinning or something
Right.
like that. So I'm curious what practically that looks like, because I'm just like, you're human.
Yeah.
You're not.
I don't think it means they didn't sin. I think it means that they turned away from idols for 80 years. So they turned back to God, and while Ehud is leading in that generation that had seen that action, they worship the Lord. The problem is he dies, and it changes. So that seems to be based on the cycles. We're at 12 o'clock, right? We're at Israel worshiping God, and they haven't turned yet. They're going to, right? But for 80 years, there's peace in terms of idol worship.
I thought peace wasn't only just because of idols, though.
In peace is certainly peace from their enemies, right? They've just put down Moab. So it's certainly both. But they have peace because they worship God. God delivered them from their enemies because they worship God and not idols, right? So.
I guess I'm just kind of amazed that there wasn't some sin because God has done things where it's not just idol worship, where it's like mixing with other cultures
Yep.
or grumbling or
Yep.
whatever the case
Yep.
was.
Correct.
It takes away that peace.
There's certainly smaller things, but I think the major stuff, he's delivered them, and they're walking with him. So there's not. I'm with you. But as you look at the cycle of Judges, it's that turning away from God that causes God to say, great, you want to do this yourself? I'll take my hands off the steering wheel. You want Moab to oppress you? Absolutely, I'll let them go worship their gods, and I will let that country rule over you. And God, because of their lack of idol worship at this point, I think is giving them stay from that. So it's a great day in Israel, okay? Chapter 3, verse 31. One verse on this dude. We get a king, or a judge, rather. I don't even think he's on our chart. Yeah, I didn't even put him in there. Bummer, because this guy's rad. 3:31. Listen to this dude.
After him came Shamgar, the son of Anath, who struck down 600 Philistines with an ox goad, and he also saved Israel.
That's it. That's his whole story, right? He saves Israel. He beats down 600 Philistines, right? Like, this guy has an amazing story, but for whatever reason, the author of Judges just gives us this little verse on it, okay? We know very little about him. Shamgar, right, who struck down 600 Philistines with an ox goad. Anybody got a note on an ox goad or know what an ox goad is? Yeah, absolutely. Me too after this. That sounds rad. Anybody got a note on an ox goad? An ox goad is a shepherd's staff. It's what you would use to move sheep or goats. Go. So what is this guy's occupation? He's probably a shepherd. He's not a king. He's not a warrior. This isn't a sword. This isn't some great implement. He's not a trained guy. So what's that tell you about this guy? Yeah, I'm willing to fight, and I'm going to fight with what I got. What do I got? I got a 6-foot stick. I guess this is going to have to work. And how did God use that? Apparently okay, right? 600 Philistines he takes down. It's a great story of a guy that steps up. He fills the gap. Am I the right guy? I don't know, but I'm willing. Are there better guys than me that are probably trained in warfare? Yeah. See also the entire tribe of Benjamin, right? Every one of those guys would have been better warriors than Shamgar, right? But he's like, hey, there's a need. No one's stepping up. I'll fill it. So he steps up, okay? By the way, that's what chapter 4 is all about. There's a need. None of the men will fill it. So a woman steps up, and she is awesome. And she's going to punk the men for their sitting on their hands and being at home watching Oprah, okay? But Shamgar is an amazing guy. That's all we get on him, unfortunately. But he delivers Israel. And the Lord, and he saved Israel, it says in verse 31, God uses this dude to deliver the nation, okay? So, chapter 4, verse 1. Let's pick up there, and let's watch now the story of Deborah.
After Ehud died, the Israelites once
That's impressive. Okay? Do you guys see the cycle? 4-1. Chris has been practicing. Do you see the cycle again? Lord Ehud dies. The Lord sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan. Why would he have sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of to Jabin, king of Canaan? They went back to their idols. They're worshiping their gods, right? We're seeing it again. So they hit the reset button. So the sons of Israel cried out to the Lord, for he had 900 iron chariots, and he oppressed the sons of Israel severely for 20 years. Isn't that fascinating? This is a great picture of sin and idolatry and slavery to sin. Why does Israel go and worship the gods of Canaan? Do you think they said, you know what we want at the end result of that is to be enslaved and oppressed severely for 20 years? Do you think that was their motivation? No. What did they want? Why do we serve idols? We think it's going to be fun and fulfilling and enjoying, right? We think it's going to take care of all of our needs. And what happens at the end of it? This sucks. This was overpromised and underdelivered. That is always what sin does. It overpromises and underdelivers. They thought that this would fulfill all their needs. And they said, man, that's what we're going to do. And God said, okay, I'm going to let you sit in that for 20 years. Tell me how that feels.
Okay, this is crazy. But this guy's name is Jabin,
Mm-hmm.
king of Hazor, right?
Jabin, yep.
They already conquered this guy in Joshua 11:2.
The city of Hatzor, yeah.
When Jabin, king of Hazor, heard of it,
Is that the same guy?
the northern kingdom, he gathered all the people together. Because I remember you said
Yeah.
Hazor. Remember Hazor?
I remember the
That
city. Huh.
And then it says Jabin, king of Hazor, heard of it. And
We're-
he gets all the kings
We're
together.
hundreds of years later, though. I doubt that's the same dude. Yeah, but great observation. Seriously. Hunter's brain, man. Impressive. Yeah, probably a different guy. I'll have to go look that up. But they get oppressed, okay? Now look who steps up in verse 4. Soccer mom, Deborah, okay? Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at this time. That's kind of odd, right? We haven't seen a woman judge before. This woman steps up, and you're going to see, man, she's awesome. She rallies people. She is a capital L leader. She has a ton of qualities in her that you're going to love, okay? She used to sit underneath the palm tree in verse 5 at Ramah in Bethel, the hill country, and the sons of Israel came up to her for judgment. Who does that sound like? Moses, absolutely. So this woman is wise. She's discerning. People come to her for insight and wisdom. This is a godly, great woman, okay? Now, verse 6, look who else she tries to recruit to her team.
Now she sent and summoned Barak, the son of Abinoam, from Kadesh Naphtali. And said to him, behold, the Lord of the God of Israel has commanded, go and march to Mount Tabor, and take with you 10,000 men from the sons of Naphtali and from the sons of Zebulun.
All right, so she calls this guy named Barak, okay? Not to be confused with the Barak that we know, but a lot of very similar qualities. Did I say that out loud? Dang it. I'm teasing. So she calls out this guy Barak and says, hey, God is leading us into battle. Let's get the sons of Naphtali, the sons of Zebulun. We're going to go march at Mount Tabor, which, by the way, Tabor is in the, wrong map. Here we go. Okay, so we're in the north. Okay, you remember I showed you guys the Jezreel Valley, the biggest kind of open plain in Israel to fight. This is where they're at. So it's happening to the southwest of the Sea of Galilee. That's the area that they're in, okay? Mount Tabor is kind of down here, right here, circled in kind of that yellow color-ish, okay? So it's kind of down there. And the valley's all around it. The circle's blue. The writing is in yellow. Yes? The circle's blue. I'm not that colorblind. Yeah. Purple, blue, problems, right? Yeah. Yeah. I've told you stories about coming home from seminary all day. I had to get up really early, and I would walk home at like 3 in the afternoon. And I had to wake up at like 4 or whatever to go. And I would come home and see my wife for the first time that day. She'd go, did you wear that today to seminary? I'm like, yeah. She's like, you realize that does not go together at all, right? I'm like, what? So then she started laying out my clothes. Wear this. I got issues, Jordan. It's true. So, yep, totally. Yeah, whenever PJ's wife was out of town, you could always tell, like, something is awry. Sherry's gone, isn't she, PJ? How did you know? Polka dots and plaid don't go together? Funny. He'd tell you too. So, anyway, so Deborah rallies this guy named Barak, okay? And she says in verse 7, listen to this offer. I will draw out to you Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army. So Jabin's the king, Sisera's the commander. She says, I will draw Jabin out to you with his chariots and many troops to the river Kishon, and I will give him into your hand. How does that sound if you're Barak? I'm going to give this enemy commander to you on a silver platter. Are you interested? And this is what he says in verse 8.
Then Barak said to her, if you will go with me, then I will go. But if you will not go with me, I will not go.
Somebody put that in Living Bible for me. What did he just say? I need you. As long as I have my blankie and my binky, right, and my security blanket, then I'm going to go with you. But if you don't go, I'm not going. So she's like, seriously? So she kind of does a big eye roll here in verse 9 and says, fine. If you don't have the courage that I have to go and to fight and to do what's right, verse 9, I will surely go with you. Nevertheless, the honor shall not be yours. What honor are they talking about? The victory in that battle, specifically to kill this enemy commander, Sisera, okay? So we're going to go, we're going to fight him, I'm going to go with you, I'm going to lead you, but the honor to kill this man is not going to be yours. In fact, it's going to go to another woman, okay? So the two heroes of this story, aside from God, are two women. And again, it is awesome. Deborah arose, went with Barak to Kadesh, verse 10. Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali together at Kadesh. 10,000 men went up with him. Deborah also went. So they're able, by the way, just notice this, in verse 10, they rally some of the tribes of Israel, okay? Just note in that. Zebulun, Naphtali, they come. Verse 11, now Heber the Kenite, we get a random verse on Moses' father-in-law, okay? The gal, by the way, that's going to save the story is a Kenite. Her name's Jael, okay? She is a Kenite related all the way back to Ruel or Jethro, Moses' father-in-law. She's going to enter the story. In verse 11 is kind of like a parenthetical comment on, oh, by the way, here's where they came from, okay? So they told Sisera, verse 12, that the Barak, the son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor. Sisera then in verse 13 called together his chariots, 900 chariots, which, by the way, is a grip, okay? So they are way outnumbered, way outpowered in this battle, and yet God's going to win the day. Verse 14, Deborah now says to Barak, arise, this is the day which the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Behold, the Lord has gone out before you. What do you notice about Deborah, by the way? What do you like about this gal? Mm-hmm. Where did God ever say that, by the way? We don't know. But she's like, today's our day. God's on our side. How would she know that, by the way? Based on what we've seen thus far. Yeah. She's turning back, or helping turn the people back. She's an anchor in the midst of this, of godliness, right? So she knows if we'll quit worshiping idols, God will deliver us from their hand. Now, God may have spoken to her. I have no idea. It's not recorded in the text. But she knows if we'll walk with God, God will honor our actions. Yeah, Jake? I think more in this sense, she's speaking truth into the culture. She's a prophet in the sense of she's calling Israel back to repentance. And that's what the prophets in the Old Testament did. So different than the New Testament gift that we talk about, a prophecy. That's speaking forward about what's to come. Old Testament prophets said, man, y'all are dumb. Worship God. Come back to what we know is right and true. So that was kind of the idea. So her wisdom, her insight, her counseling that she's a part of, she is confident that God will deliver them. Okay. Now, Barak, on the other hand, needs his blankie. Barak calls Zebulun and all these folks with him. We saw that earlier in the text. Watch what God does now in verse 15.
As Barak advanced, the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and army without a sword. And Sisera
How about that? So you get a verse on the battle, and it's over. God shows up in a major way. Keep rolling.
But Barak pursued the chariots and army as far as Harosheth and Goyim. All the troops of Sisera fell by the sword, not a man was left.
Man, that's crazy. Again, typical. We get one verse, and now 16 is more like a cleanup verse, right, on the battle itself, okay? And then verse 17, the scene changes. This is great.
Sisera, however, fled on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, because there were friendly relations between Jabin, king of Hazor, and the clan of Heber the Kenite.
All right, Jael, okay, is the wife of Heber the Kenite. So she's the gal that's living in a tent. This tribe is at peace with Sisera and their armies, okay, Jabin's army. The military commander of Jabin's army flees on foot, right? The battle's been lost. His men are dead, but he's still alive. And he's looking for safe passage. Verse 18, keep rolling.
Jael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, "Come, my boy, come right in. Don't be afraid." So he entered her tent, and she put a covering over him. "I'm thirsty."
What happens here in verse 18? He comes into her tent, and what does she do? Puts a blankie on him, right? Lay down. Have a seat. Take a load off. Take off your shoes, right? Lay down. Here's a blankie, right? 19. We got to have a woman read this. So, Jordan, pick up there in 19.
I'm thirsty, he said. Please give me some water. She opened a skin of milk, gave him a drink, and covered him.
He asked for what? Water. And she gave him milk. Gave him a blankie, and now gives him some milk. What is she doing? Yeah, here's some warm milk for you, right? I'm going to put you in a tryptophan coma, right? You're going to have some milk and some turkey. And we're going to turn on the Cowboys game. And Thanksgiving afternoon. You're gone, right? And watch what he does. Verse 20, Jordan, keep reading.
Stand in the doorway of the tent and told her, "If someone comes by and asks you, is anyone here, say no."
Okay, so what's the plan? Oh, it's so nice in here. I'm going to take a quick nap, right? I'm going to lay down. If someone asks if I'm here, just tell them no, right? Thinking that the enemy is outside. Well, the enemy is inside. Keep rolling, Jordan.
But Jael, Heber's wife, picked up a tent peg and a hammer and went quietly to him while he lay fast asleep.
So she's got a tent peg, a stake in her hand. You see where this is going, and a hammer, right? And he's night-night. All asleep, right? Milked out, gone. And
She drove the peg through his temple into the ground, and he died.
I bet he did. Temple to temple, all the way through. You are now a permanent fixture in her home, right? Drives a tent peg through his temple. It went through it into the ground, for he was sound asleep and exhausted, and just in case you weren't sure, so he died, is how the NASB reads that. So, 2 women rescue the day, right? We get Deborah the prophetess and Jael the Kenite, right? Barak does not get the glory, just as Deborah promised, and these 2 women save the day, okay? God subdued, verse 23, Jabin, the king of Canaan. Before the sons of Israel, the hand of the sons of Israel pressed heavier and heavier upon Jabin, the king of Canaan, and they destroyed Jabin, the king of Canaan. That is the entire story. So 2 women rule the day. Now, as is typical in my home, once women do something, then they want to spend a lot of time talking about it and sharing their feelings about it. That is chapter 5, okay? Tongue in cheek, okay? But chapter 5 is a review of everything that happened, okay? This is Deborah's song. They're going to sing about what happened in order to, I tease it, Moses did the same thing, right? But they're gonna remember this moment, and we're going to get insights in this battle and insights as to what's actually happening in Israel that we don't see in the story. This is really good, okay? So Deborah and Barak, the son of Abinadab, sang on that day, okay? Verse 2 of chapter 5, somebody pick up there. It is a duet. It's like Sonny and Cher. Here we go. Yeah, he can't fight, but he can sing. How about that?
Verse 2.
Please.
That the leaders led in Israel, that the people volunteered. Bless the Lord. Hear, O kings, give ear, O rulers. To the Lord I will sing. I will sing praise to the Lord, the God of Israel.
All right, this is a
celebration.
Yeah. Isaiah, what you got, man? It's the idea. It's this. Yeah, it's a song, and that's how they did it, so they would remember it, right? And this is a song about God getting glory because of what He did in Israel. Keep rolling.
Lord, when you marched out from Seir, when you marched from the field of Edom, the earth quaked, the heavens also dripped, even the clouds dripped water, the mountains quaked at the presence of the Lord. This Sinai, at the presence of the Lord, the God of
Man, that's a big day, right? They're remembering what God has done in the days of Shamgar, verse 6, of the same time period that this was happening. In the days of Jael, the highways were deserted, and travelers went by roundabout ways. Why would all the highways, the normal roads of travel in Israel during the day of Shamgar, or also Deborah, be deserted? Exactly. Why would you be concerned that you would die? Your enemy is oppressing you, right? So you can't go out in safety. So the condition of the day is that the Moabites have so oppressed them, that's Gideon's day, and the Canaanites now are so oppressing them and control your whole country that it's not safe to leave your home, to go trade, right? In fact, it's going to go on and say in verse 7, the peasantry ceased, meaning they're fleeing the city, right? There's no interaction, there's no trade, there's fear everywhere, until verse 7, I, Deborah, arose until I, a mother in Israel. So this isn't some 22-year-old college student, former athlete. This is a mom in Israel that says, is nobody else going to step up? I'm going to step up because this is what's right. So this woman fills the gap in a great way, very similar to Ehud before her, Shamgar, I mean, all these great leaders so far, okay? And this is her commentary on what's happening in Israel during that day. Look at verse 8.
New gods were chosen.
So how did we get in this mess? New gods were chosen. We've been at peace for 80 years underneath Ehud and his leadership, Shamgar as well. But new gods were chosen, and now because of that, God says, okay, great, keep rolling.
War was in the gates. Not a shield or a spear was seen among 40,000 in Israel.
What does that mean? Not a shield or a spear was seen among 40,000 in Israel. Who held the swords and the shields in Israel? Normally within Israel. If Israel was going to go fight, the men. What is this the commentary on? Where are the men? There's no men to be found to fight, right? When we count in number who can go fight, we count men over the age of 20, right? It doesn't mean that women aren't capable. It just means that in Israel, it was the men that were physically stronger and taller and what have you that were going to go fight the battles. And Deborah's saying, where are you? I'm looking around. And among 40,000 of you from the tribes that are around me, there's nobody here to fight. Where are you? So it's a commentary. It's condemning to the men that they will not step up and fulfill their role in this season. So my heart goes out to the commanders of Israel, the volunteers among the people, you who ride on white donkeys, you who sit on rich carpets, you who travel on the road and sing, that celebrated the victories. This is a victory march. Like, you've done that in the past, but where are you now? Okay? At the sound, verse 11, of those who divide the flocks of the watering places, they shall recount the righteous deeds of the Lord, the righteous deeds of his peasantry in Israel. The people, then the people of the Lord went down to the gates. Okay, so there are a group of people that are ready to fight, and it's verse 12, Deborah, who rallies them. Okay, so she steps up, we see in verse 12, with Barak, rallies the people. Look at verse 14. Look who comes. From Ephraim, those whose root is down in Amalek came down. So Ephraim came when they called. Verse 14, Benjamin, they came. Machir, who's Machir in verse 14, by the way? It's a name for another tribe. Not Zebulun. Manasseh. Manasseh and Machir, you're going to see that frequently. Okay, so the tribe of Manasseh comes. Where's Manasseh located? Both sides of the Jordan River, remember? They got territory on both sides, but they're further north, okay? Benjamin, by the way, is way down south in Jerusalem, right? But they come, and verse 14, Zebulun. So we see 4 tribes mentioned. When she sounds the horn and says, it's time to fight, they rise up, okay? There were princes of Issachar that were with Deborah, so they come. Issachar was with Barak. Into valley, they rushed at his heels. So these 5 tribes are mentioned and come. Verse 15, look who doesn't. Okay, read this. Among the divisions of Reuben, there were great resolves of heart. What does that mean? Yeah, undecided. What does it mean to have a resolve of heart, right? You feel really emotional about this issue, but what do you do about it? Nothing. Like you say a bunch of great words, but when push comes to shove, you're sitting on your hands. Verse 16, she says to them, "Why did you sit among the sheepfolds to hear the piping for the flocks? Among the divisions of Reuben, there were great searching of hearts. You made excuses, and you sat among your sheep and said, oh, I have responsibilities. I have other things that I need to do. I gotta feed the sheep today. I'm sorry I can't help do battle." So she's calling them out and punking them, and rightly so. Verse 17, Gilead remained across the Jordan. Who's Gilead? It's another name for a tribe. Who's on the east side of the Jordan River? Nope, you only got 3 options. Gad, okay? So where does Gad stay? On the east side of the Jordan. They don't come fight. They won't cross the Jordan and come fight, okay? And verse 17, and why did Dan stay in ships? Where was Dan's territory, you guys remember? That boomerang-shaped territory that we talked about? On the seashore. They stayed in their home. They won't come. Asher as well. Verse 17, sat by this, the seashore and remained by its landing. Zebulun was the people who despised their lives even to death, and Naphtali also in the high places of the field, meaning these tribes came, they despised their lives and were willing to fight. Y'all sat at home and came up with great excuses as to why you couldn't participate in God's battle. Okay, she punks these men. Okay, and it's a strong word. Okay, she reviews the battle in 19 and following, continues to say that these tribes are the ones that ultimately got it done. Yeah, Don.
Can we go back to where it talks about the 40,000 again in verse 8? There were now men in that age, or the men chose to not step up?
The latter. There were plenty of men. They chose not to step up. Exactly. Okay. She reviews the battle in verse 19, and she rolls through the places where they came. Megiddo, which is in the valley of Armageddon. That's the name where we get Armageddon from, Megiddo, in the Jezreel Valley. So the battle occurs here in the verses that follow. Verse 24 is now a summation kind of the battle and what happened. Okay, and who's going to ultimately get the blessing? Look at verse 24. A magnificent bowl, right? Only a woman could write that. I love it.
She reached out her hand for the tent peg. Never singing about this.
Yeah, it's so good, dude. Sing it, Hunter. Come on, you're a worship leader, dude.
In her right hand for the workman's hammer. Then she struck Sisera. She smashed his head. I can't do this, guys.
Yeah, right? Like it's like this gentle song that is just so violent, right? Between her feet, he bowed, he fell, he lay. Like you get the picture. Like where is his head when she's doing this? It's like he's bowing to her because she's above him, ramming a stake through his temple. So now, this is crazy. 28 and following, you're going to get an insight as to how bad these oppressing nations were and why Deborah now steps up. Look at this. The scene completely changes, okay? 28, read this.
Out of the window she looked and lamented. The mother of Sisera through the lattice. Why does his chariot delay in coming? Why do the hoofbeats of his chariot tarry?
Who are we talking about here? Sisera's mom. So we're going to like this hypothetical place of Sisera's mom, and she's wondering what? Where is he? Why is Sisera, who's asleep in Jael's tent, why is he not coming home? He's delayed. Verse 29, her wise princesses would answer her. Indeed, she repeats herself, her words. Verse 30, are they not dividing the spoil? Oh, that's why they're delayed. They're dividing all the spoil of the battle that they won. They defeated the Israelites, and they're dividing all their stuff. Now, the end of verse 30 is very, very telling and very, very horrific. Are they not dividing the spoil? A maiden, 2 maidens for every warrior. What does that mean? Does anybody have a different translation than a maiden or two maidens? A womb is the actual Hebrew. After the battle, they're saying the men are dividing the spoil. A womb or a woman or two women for every man. What's being said here? What are the men doing after the battle? They're raping the women. This is Sisera's mom's commentary on what her son and all the other men from Canaan are doing to the women after they've won a battle. Wow. So this is not light. This is not minor. When you were sold into the oppression of these people, this was normative, and according to the words of a mother, somewhat acceptable in pagan practice. Yeah, Ben? Correct. Correct. Deborah's inspired thoughts by the Word of God. But I think what she's saying is this was normative practice when pagans entered a land and defeated people. This was not abnormal. So the women would just get raped. Like, wow. Like, and who steps up to lead this whole battle? Two amazing women that saved the day of Israel and saved every other Israelite woman from this fate because the men won't lead. Okay? So, very sad state of affairs, but very telling as to what the practices were in the land. Okay, so anyway, this song goes down in history. It's a reminder of God's faithfulness, of what He can do, and who He worked through in this day. Okay, so really cool story. Deborah, who gets the glory, and Jael as well, and Barak kind of lingering in the background. So beautiful story. So 4 judges so far: Othniel, Ehud, our boy Shamgar, 1 verse, and now Deborah and Barak that have ruled the day. Deborah primarily.
Just a clarification. Sisera was oppressing what tribe? Was it everywhere?
Everywhere. So Sisera was the commander. Not Jael. Jabin was the king of Canaan. So again, why do we have a Jabin king of Canaan oppressing Israel? Because they didn't kick him out of the land. What did they do? Oh, come work for us. Hey, why don't you haul water and build altars and do all the heavy lifting that we don't want to do? That sounds more better. So the problem was now we have generations that have transpired, and now what's happened? The teeter-totter switched. Israel went, oh, your gods are kind of fun to worship. I think we want to do that. That's very appealing to my flesh. So we're going to do that. And all of a sudden God said, okay. So that's how we wound up there. Okay? So that's what's going on. All right? Now, chapter 6 through chapter 9. There you go. 40 years. So, not so much. I think it's really just when either the former judge dies, which is common, the person that kind of has ruled people, and there's a vacuum, a vacancy of leadership, they turn. So more than likely what happened was Deborah's reign is over, and the people now have turned back. So they, without a true king or a true leader, and again, this is what is going to cause them to want a king, they fumble awful. So.
After this, they looked to God for 40 years. He was still alive, and then she died. And we go on to the same turning about.
Exactly. So we're doing IndyCar laps, right? So for 40 years, we don't see the death of Deborah, but it would appear that that's why it went that way. Okay. So chapter 6 all the way through chapter 9, we're going to look at Gideon. And Gideon, in a lot of ways, is he's a great hero. We're going to look at him. We're going to look at his son that comes after him in chapter 9. Great guy. And it's going to start getting weird here now with the judges themselves. Like before, it was like, rah, godliness. Yeah, we're going to bring you back. Like these first couple judges, as we've seen in the chart, have done that, right? They've been pretty good. Okay, Ehud's going to be our first, where his story is like 99% awesome, and 1% you're like, huh, like what is that? So we'll look at it at the end. Okay, so as a reminder, this, by the way, is Gideon to me. Just to throw this out there. This is as right brain as Mike gets, okay? as I think about Gideon, and as you think about this story, this is the image I want you to have in your head, okay? This is a painting by a guy by the name of Rene Magritte. It was done in like 1930s. The title of the painting is called Clairvoyance, okay? Now, unpack what you see for me.
He's looking at an egg and painting a bird.
All right, so this artist is looking at an egg, and he's painting a bird.
He also has colors on his palette that are not anywhere in there. Like in a lot of like yellow in particular.
Yeah. Yep.
He's like seeing what's to come from the egg.
Yeah.
The bird, like as an adult bird.
Yeah.
What he's going to look like when he's flying
Yeah.
and free.
Yeah. So what is this picture all about? What's it the ability to do? See ahead. See potential, right? Right now, Gideon's just an egg, right? Gideon's an egg. Deep thoughts with Mike. But when God sees Gideon, God's not going to see Gideon for what he is. God's going to see Gideon for what he can be and what he will be, right? And again, clairvoyance is kind of a way to put it, right? That's how. But the idea is it's this sixth sense, right? It's the ability to see beyond what is into the future. And God obviously has that ability, and he's going to call Gideon out of his egg state to be a great leader in Israel. Okay, so I want you to keep that imagery in the back of your mind as you think about our boy Gideon. Okay, 6 verse 1. Let's pick up on his story.
Then the sons of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord gave them into the hands of Midian 7 years.
I feel like we've read this before. Oh wait, no, just on repeat. Okay, did evil, worship their gods. Our boy Gideon now is going to step up, and they get sold into the hands of Midian, and they are bad. They are ruthless. Look at what they do. Verse 2.
The power of Midian prevailed against Israel. Because of Midian, the sons of Israel made for themselves the dens which were in the mountains and the caves and the strongholds. For it was when Israel had sown that the Midianites would come up with the Amalekites
Yep.
and the sons of the east and go against them. So they would camp against them and destroy the produce of the earth as far as Gaza, and leave no sustenance in Israel, as well as no sheep, ox, or donkey.
Now this is dirty. The Midianites, come against Israel when? Verse 4. During harvest. And what do? They destroy everything, the entire harvest. They let them reap the fields, they let them sow, they let them do everything. They do all that. And then during harvest season, that very short season where you're going to bring in the produce of your land, that's going to feed you for the entire year. Then the Amalekites and the Midianites come in and they just burn it all. And then they leave. That's dirty. And not only did they destroy the produce, what else did they destroy? End of verse 4. The sheep, the ox, the donkey, anything else that you thought you were going to eat, we're going to take everything. So you're going to be enslaved to us. So 7 years of this, and they got tired of it. Oh, but worshiping their gods is going to be so much fun, they said, right? That's the lie. But this is the reality, okay? They would come up with their livestock like tents. They would come like the locust for number. They had both camels that were innumerable. And they came in the land to devastate it. So it is a bad, bad day in Israel. Everybody's hiding up in the foothills. They're hiding in caves. They're fearful of the Midianites. And you're kind of literally hand to mouth every day, finding and scrapping for food. Now, verse 7, let's watch what happens.
Now it came about when the sons of Israel cried to the Lord on account of Midian, that the Lord sent a prophet to them, sons of Israel. And he said to them, Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, it was I who brought you up out of the land from Egypt and brought you out in the house of slavery. I delivered you from the hands of the Egyptians and from the hands of all your oppressors, and dispossessed them before you and gave you their land. And I said to you, I am the Lord your God, and you shall not fear the gods of the Amorites in whose land you live. But you have not obeyed me.
So God sends this random prophet that literally does exactly what prophets do. Speaks truth about what God has done in the past, right? Reminds Israel of his faithfulness, and yet they continue to turn away from God. So 8 through 10, this guy's the hero of the story in a sense of calling Israel to repentance and reminds them, you have not obeyed me. You're in this mess because of your own doing, okay? Then, Verse 11, the angel of the Lord came and sat underneath the oak tree at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, and his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress in order to save it from the Midianites. Okay? Unpack that for me. There's a lot going on. So we meet Gideon. His dad, by the way, is Joash the Abiezrite. Don't forget that. Okay, we'll see him later. The angel of the Lord comes to this kid, and what is he doing in verse 11? Beating wheat, okay? Tell me about threshing wheat. Where do you thresh wheat? You wheat threshers, you? On a threshing floor, okay? Where is a threshing floor? Yeah, on a hilltop. Why on a hilltop? Correct. So you would take your fork, right, your pitchfork, you would throw up the wheat, right? And the heavier wheat would fall back down, but the chaff, the stuff that you don't want in there, would get caught by the wind and it would blow it away, okay? You have to do it on a hilltop so that you would have wind, okay? What's the problem with threshing wheat on a hilltop when you're being oppressed by an enemy nation? Yeah, look at me. Hey, I'm over here, right? It's like lights and sirens. Everybody can see you. So where does Gideon thresh his wheat? Where's a wine press? See, you guys can see all these things in Israel. It's so much fun in November. You should come. We'll show you a wine press. Show it all to you, okay? Down low, in a pit, okay, you would thresh wine. You would put the grapes in there. You would stomp on them, right? And then they would thresh wine. Or olive presses are the same, right? But it was a low place, right? So how do you think it was? How do you think it went for Gideon threshing wheat in a wine press? Not ideal. Long, right? You're probably hand sorting, right? Wheat, chaff. I mean, it's off. That's not the way to do it. But if you want to live, that's the way to do it. Okay, so he's being completely oppressed, right? Bad day. Now, look who shows up in verse 12. Keep going.
The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, "The Lord is with you, O valiant warrior."
Oh, valiant warrior, Gideon, who's threshing wheat in a wine press. Like, you are not an oh, valiant warrior. You are an egg. But God says, you're a bird, right? Sorry, it's the best I got, okay? What's going on here? What is the angel of the Lord saying to him? I'm calling you out. I see your potential. I know what you're going to be. You don't feel like a valiant warrior right now. You don't look like a valiant warrior right now. But you're going to be, because you're going to walk with me and you're going to do great things, okay? Gideon is, man, what did our boy call him? A coward of a man, I think is what the words that he used when he described him. Gideon's a bit of a sissy. He's scared, and that's all fine and good, right? He has every reason to be scared, right? Verse 13, watch what he says.
Then Gideon said to him, "O my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his miracles which our fathers told us about, saying, did not the Lord bring us out from Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian."
Right? That's all accurate. Like, God's not here. He sold us into the hands of the Midianites. Now, he doesn't really take responsibility for why that happened, but he says, man, God's not here. Where is the God that brought us out of Egypt? I like that God. The magic show God, the miracle God. We need him right now. That'd be awesome. Like, no, what you need is obedience. And what you don't have is an allegiance to him. So, verse 14, this is what the angel of the Lord says.
The Lord looked at him and said, "Go in this your strength and deliver Israel from the hand of Midian. Have I not sent you?"
What does that mean? Go in this your strength and deliver Israel from the hand of Midian. I'm sorry, what strength? What strength are we talking about?
Well, I think it's saying that, he has, what strength you have is a statement, and he has little strength, but I'm going to do the rest. Am I not sending you? It's kind of saying, I'm going to do the rest for you.
Correct. What strength specifically, according to verse 13, is he referring to? God's strength. Gideon, you're right. God did deliver you from Israel, or from Egypt. He took you out. He redeemed you. He brought you forth. In that strength, go. It has nothing to do with you. You're going to be obedient, and you're going to be faithful. It's in God's strength that he will deliver him. I'm going to use you. You're a tool, right? In a lot of ways, you're a tool. But be great in that, right? God uses the foolish things to shame the wise, Paul tells us in Corinthians, right? I'm going to use you to demonstrate my strength through weakness. And Gideon's going to say, you got the wrong guy. Very Moses-esque. Look what he says now in verse 15.
He said to him, O Lord, how shall I deliver Israel? Behold, my family is the least in Manasseh, and I am the youngest in my father's house.
What does Gideon say? Yeah, I'm weak. I'm a nobody. My family is the least among the tribe of Manasseh. We're at the bottom of the totem pole. Not only that, but I am the youngest in my father's house. And God says, exactly. That is exactly who I use. Gideon just doesn't get it. He doesn't understand that this is who God likes to use. This is going to be the pattern, okay? What's the lesson in that for you and me when God uses us to do great things? Don't get arrogant. Don't think it's about you. Do not read the front page of the paper the next morning and pat yourself on the back. It is not us. God can use anybody at any time, right? If he wants to use a weak sissy threshing wheat in a wine press, boy, that guy looks very familiar to me. But he'll use them. God wants to use a soccer mom driving a minivan. He can do that. If he wants to use really impressive people that outwardly look impressive, he can use them too. But at the end of the day, you're going to go in the strength of what God has done in the past because of his character. He will deliver you, okay? And you're going to see Gideon, man, he wrestles with doubt. He wrestles with insecurity. He wrestles with, can God really use me? But the Lord said to him in verse 16, surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat Midian as one man. You're going to go, and I'm going to be with you, and again, that is where your strength lies, okay? Verse 17, let's keep going.
So Gideon said to him, if now I have found favor in your sight, then show me a sign that is you who speak with me.
I need more, God. I need an email. I need a plane that comes by that writes stuff in the sky. I need a sign. Like, you are standing in front of the angel of the Lord. Like, we don't see this guy often. And you're getting a sign, bro. You have no idea. But he needs more. And this guy's going to be exceedingly patient and gracious with Gideon. Okay, give me a sign. Do not depart till I come back to you and bring you my offering and lay it before you. And he says, okay, I'll remain until you return. Like, okay, I'll stay here stabbing his foot. Go get your offering. You have your offering now, Gideon? Okay, present your 18. Keep going, 19.
Then Gideon went in and prepared a young goat and unleavened bread from an ephah flour. He put the meat in a basket and the broth in a pot, and brought them out to him under the oak and presented them.
All right, now here are your instructions. Take the meat, the unleavened bread, lay them on this rock, and pour out the broth. And he did so. Okay, so he makes kind of a drink offering, a burnt offering of sorts. The angel of the Lord put out the end of his staff that was in his hand, touched the meat and the unleavened bread, and fire sprang up from the rock and consumed the meat and unleavened bread. What did you want, Gideon? A what? A sign. What did you just get? A sign. We just torched your offering. There's no priest. There is no altar. There's no fire. I'll just call down fire from heaven, right? This is the idea. So you got your offering, and in the midst of that, the angel of the Lord vanished from his sight. Gideon, are we clear on who I am, what you're going to do, that God's behind this, right? Gideon says now in verse 22, alas, O God, O Lord God, rather, for now I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face, right? He gets it, and the angel says, the Lord says to him now in verse 23, peace to you, do not fear, you shall not die, right? Which is always a really cool reminder. What is the reaction of people whenever they stand in front of the angel of the Lord? I'm going to die. I'm going to die. The fear of the Lord, right? In a good way, but that reverence, they're in the presence of holiness, and there's that reminder in that moment, I am not that. I am not holy, and God's going to kill me. And God says, you're not going to die. Fear not, okay? Then Gideon built an altar there to the Lord and named it, the Lord is peace. Now, verse 25, Gideon's going to rally, and watch where he has to start. This is a great, great text for any of you guys that do ministry with junior hires, high schoolers, college students, young believers. Where does ministry start? Yeah, Hunter.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, like, through this whole story, something that amazes me so much is, like, God's patience and love. Like, with Moses, he's like, he gets angry, he's like, corrupt. But, like, here, like, he's told him, this is what's going to happen, guys.
Yeah.
it's like God is so love. Even that like
Yeah.
that joke, like he's like, yeah, go do that. I'll wait here.
Yeah.
Like it's just crazy
Yeah.
like, to see God's love in this passage.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I just like wanted to vent that.
Yeah. No, and he gives one good excuse. Moses gave 4, and I think God had it at that point. But yeah, so he's great. Now, by the way, there's more coming with Gideon. He's not done with this. I need a sign. Okay, I need another sign. So he's going to keep asking, but God is going to be gracious. Okay, but watch where his ministry has to start. Yeah, Jay. Yeah, absolutely. It's a projection of all that is going to have to occur in his life. Like you're going to have to go in that fear. So absolutely. Okay. 25.
Now on the same night, the Lord said to him, "Take your father's bull and a second bull, 7 years old, and pull down the altar of Baal which belongs to your father, and cut down the Asherah that is beside it, and build an altar to the Lord your God on top of this stronghold in an orderly manner. And take a second bull and offer it a burnt offering with wood of the Asherah, which you shall cut down."
So make some observations, 25 and 26. What's going on? Ooh. Number one, what's going on in Israel right now? Idolatry. Gideon's dad has 2 altars in his backyard. One to Baal and one to Asherah, right? These are awful gods of the day, right? This is normative in Israel. I mean, this is a long, long way, right, from this generation that entered into the promised land and said, we will obey everything you say, right? No, you don't, okay? And we don't either. So he's got to start with that. Now, the same night, what's the angel of the Lord now calling Gideon to do? Where does he call him to start? In his own house. Talk to me. Why is that significant? That before he can go save the nation and deliver them, he's going to have to go post up at home.
Is that the same concept as the high priest making their own offering before they can do anything for the people? Like leading their life right? Like aligning themselves?
Similar. I think there's some concentric circles there. I think this is maybe a little bit different in terms of the story it's telling.
How are you going to lead if like this is what you're coming from? Like you're like, well, that's going on, but like that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like, it's progress.
Okay?
Yeah, I was just gonna say. Then even going through like Timothy talking about the elders, like if your house is out of control, how are you gonna be in control of the Lord's house?
So good, right? That's the same concept. Man, if you're not doing it at home, you're not going to be able to do it in church. You want to go to China and be a missionary? Are you telling people about Jesus at Fresno State? Like your neighbors? Are you doing that here? What makes you think that a lack of current faithfulness is going to lead to faithfulness in another place? God doesn't work that way. He takes people that are moving and currently faithful in whatever position God's put them in, big or small, significant or not, and he takes them to other places. So if you're not currently being faithful in the station of life that God has you, don't think that God is going to somehow now elevate you to new positions of faithfulness, right? That's the idea. And by the way, where is the hardest place to do ministry? In your home. Why? They know you. They know everything about you. They know your sin. They know that you don't take out the garbage. They know that you've got a short tongue. They know that, look, I wiped your rear end, kid. What are you talking? You can tell me about Jesus? Like, what are you talking about, right? My parents thought I was a nut job. My mom thought I was in a cult. Literally had it investigated. When I came home as a freshman in college, talked about Campus Crusade for Christ, and she's like, I'm sorry, what? Who? Where did my son go? And where did you take him? And bring him back, please, right? And I started talking about Jesus, and she was like, who's this organ? Literally is asking people like, is this a cult? No, they're normal and, don't handle snakes and whatever. But she thought, like I'd gone off the deep end. She thought I was full on nuts, right? And I remember I was in a great college ministry. They said, Mike, when you go home, shut your mouth, go make your bed, go take out the trash. Speak kindly to your parents. Show them life change. Look and act different. And when you have earned the right to speak in their lives, those doors will open. But don't you dare go home and be the same, goofball that you were growing up and expect them to hear your message of the life change that's found in Jesus Christ. So Demonstrate it, walk it, live in it, right? And by the grace of God, they realized I wasn't a total, complete nut job, and that God had gotten a hold of me, and they listened, and God used me amongst a lot of other voices to make some difference in our home, which was really cool. And that's where Gideon's going to have to start. And that is hard. For any of you guys who have grown up in homes where your parents do not know the Lord, and you are the epicenter of Christianity in your home, and it starts with you, boy, it is hard. But Gideon does a great job. Now, he does a great job, but watch what he does. I love this about him. And God's, again, exceedingly gracious. Go tear down the altar, the Asherah that's beside it, now build a new altar to the Lord, right? This is public. This is visible for everybody to see, okay? Verse 27.
Then Gideon took 10 men of his servants and did as the Lord had spoken to him. And because he was too afraid of his father's household and the men of the city to do it by day, he did it by night.
Isn't that good? I'm not doing this at noon. Everyone's going to see me. So everybody set your alarm clock for 2 in the morning, and we'll meet at my parents' house. Wear black and be really, really quiet, okay? And we're going to tear down the altar quietly, very quietly, okay? And they do it, right? When the men of the city arose in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was torn down, Asherah pole beside it was cut down, and the second bull was offered on the altar which they had built. And they said, who did this thing? So the exact opposite of what Gideon wants to happen happens, right? Who did this? So they find out. They just don't catch him. And when they inquired, Gideon, the son of Joash, did this thing, same day. They're like, oh boy. So Gideon's plan backfires a little bit. God honors it, but they find him out in a hurry. 30, watch what happens. This is awesome. Now, what's your conundrum as a dad in this moment? You like Baal and Asherah because you built an altar to them in your backyard. So you're clearly on board with worshiping them. But the men of the city want to do what? Kill your son. Now, his dad's advice is absolutely brilliant. This is good.
But Joash said to all who stood against him, will you contend for Baal, or will you deliver him? Whoever will plead for him shall be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him contend for himself, because someone has torn down his altar.
Isn't that great? Does he need your help? Does Baal need your help? Is he that meaningless and worthless? Yes. That he needs help to defend himself? Whoever defends him will be put to death by morning. Let Baal contend for Baal. He can do it on his own, right? And now if you're worshiping that God, you're kind of stuck now. Because what are you saying if you say, no, we need to go contend for Baal? Well, you're contending that he's a G.I. Joe action figure, that he's useless, right? He belongs on a mantle to be looked at. But if you really believe that he's something, then you'd say, yeah, right? So all the men are like, yeah, therefore, he'll contend for himself, right? On that day, they named him Jerubbaal. That is to say, let Baal contend for himself because he's torn down the altar. They rename Gideon Jerubbaal. So he's got 2 names now. And it literally it means let Baal contend. So his dad is the one that ultimately saves him from the death of these guys that want to take him down. So pagan dad saves the day, which is awesome. So it's at least cool to see him rise up, okay? Now, he gets it done at home. And again, great verse for new believers, great place to walk them through. Even in fear, even in trembling, Gideon gets it done. And God honors his choice to do it at night. And lets him feel a little bit of the heat, and it's his dad that ends up saving the day, okay? 33, let's keep going. All right, so now they're in our territory. Keep going.
So the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, and the Abiezrites were called together to follow him. He sent messengers throughout Manasseh, and they also, were called together to follow him. And he sent messengers to Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, and they came up to meet him.
So what's Gideon doing?
Getting on me.
Yeah. Is this the same Gideon at chapter 6 early on? What do you see that's different? He's leading, right? He's seen God's faithfulness, like God saved his life, and now there's a sense of courage rising up in this young man. He's coming out of his shell, quite literally, right? He's becoming a leader, and he's rallying entire tribes to come fight with him. Now notice, Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, Naphtali, they're coming, And Gideon now says to God, if you will deliver Israel through me, as you have spoken, behold, I will put a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece only, and it is dry on the ground, then I will know that you will deliver Israel through me as you have spoken. So what's Gideon doing yet again? I need another sign that you're going to do this, right? So he's moving, but he's still gripped by fear a bit.
He's kind of too late. Like, he already got the argument.
I called everybody that are on their way. God, please confirm here, right? So you can tell he's having second thoughts. So, and again, God's going to be patient with him in this. So he says, what's that?
That's so much like this.
Right? Doubts and second thoughts that creep in. And yeah, exactly. So what's he asked for, 36? What does he say? He wants dew on the fleece only, but the ground dry. Verse 38, and it was so. God does exactly what he asks. When he arose the next morning, he squeezed the fleece, he drained the dew of the fleece into a bowl full of water. The fleece was wet, the ground was dry. And then Gideon went, oh, I may have asked for the wrong thing. What I should have asked for was wet ground, dry fleece. Like, for real? Do not let your anger burn against me, that I may speak one more time in your presence, O Lord. Let me test one more time with this fleece. Let now the dry only be on the fleece, and let the dew be on the ground. God did so that night, for it was dry only on the fleece, and the dew was on the ground. Like, Gideon, what else do you need, bro? Like, he's done it all. He's super patient with you, but you see this, again, this insecurity in him. It's so good, okay? Verse 1, chapter 7 now. Let's watch this battle.
Early in the morning, Jerubbaal led Gideon and all his men camped at the spring of Harod.
We also go to there in Israel. So much fun. So much fun.
The camp of Midian was north of them in the valley near the hill of Moreh. The Lord said to Gideon, you have too many men for me to deliver Midian into their hand. In order that Israel may not boast against me that her own strength has saved her, announce now to the people, anyone who trembles with fear may turn back and leave Mount Gilead.
Wait. We got what? What problem do we have right now, God? We have too many people. God, do you know who we're going up against? Like, these people are innumerable. How can we? The too many is on their side, not our side. So God's going to say, no, we're going to whittle this down a little bit. Okay? So whoever's afraid and trembling, let them go. Let them depart. So, verse 3, 22,000 people returned, but 10,000 remained. It's kind of that moment like when you're the commander in the battlefield, you're like, who's with me? And a third of the people raise their hand, and 2/3 of the people are like, no, we're out. We're actually really scared, and we're going home. This is the opposite of Mel Gibson in Braveheart, right? He's not doing a great job. So, literally, you got 32,000 people standing ready to fight. 22,000 of them turn and go home. If you're Gideon, how do you feel right now? You're demoralized. You're like, I suck as a leader. Like, this is not good, right? So, he's feeling like, okay, we lost a lot of people, but there's still 10,000 people here. This is good, okay? Then verse 4, the Lord said, the people are still too many. I'm sorry, what, God? Bring them down to the water, and I will test them for you there, okay? So we still have too many. Apparently 10,000 against an innumerable army is way too good of odds for God. So we need to whittle this down some more, okay? So he's going to bring these men down to the water to test them. Verse 5, this is the test. This is an odd deal. Tell me if you can figure out what's going on here.
So he brought the people down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, you shall separate everyone who laps the water with his tongue as a dog laps, as well as everyone who kneels to drink.
Okay, so they're going to go drink water from the river, okay, the Harod Spring, okay? And there's two ways that you can drink water, apparently, in this text. What's the distinction here? One is one who laps water with his tongue like a dog, as opposed to everyone who kneels to drink, okay? Those of you that have dogs at home, how do dogs drink? They stick their face in the bowl and they drink, right? Now, those who kneel, what does that mean?
Like taking the water up to their face?
That's probably the distinction, okay? Why would God say, everybody who drinks like a dog, you're out? What's the idea? As a warrior, why would that be a bad thing? Your face is down. You're unprepared. You're not ready for battle. You're more concerned about your physical needs. Now, if you're bringing hand to your mouth to drink water, what are you doing? That's, I think, the idea. Now, it can go both ways. Some commentators are saying they picked the ones that had strength, that had the appearance of strength or awareness, the best people. By the way, there's only 300 of them, okay? So 9,700 stuck their face in the water, and the other 300 were the only ones that figured out how to drink correctly. Some commentators have even said the opposite, that maybe what God was actually doing was picking the ones that were weak. And that maybe the 300, and whatever the terminology is, that these were actually the ones that failed the test, and the 9,700 passed, and he kicked all them out. And said, you failures, you come with me, because you're just like Gideon, right? I'm going to be the one that wins the battle. So I don't know, but commentators have, well, this is what it means to kneel, and if you kneel, you're sticking your face in, I don't know, and drink like a dog, maybe you're licking and looking up. I don't know, right? So dogs actually lick backwards. Have you ever noticed? I had to study this when I taught this. Their tongues don't scoop water into their mouth like this. Their tongues go like this. So anyway, it's bizarre. But commentators have said a little bit of everything, and they've gotten to those levels of details. But this is how the dog's tongue goes, so they're actually the ones that pass. You're spending way too much time in this passage, bro, so relax. Anyway, we end up with 300 men, and now God's like, okay, 300 against a gazillion, now our odds are correct, okay? So, verse 8, the 300 men took the provisions, the trumpets into their hands. Gideon sent all the other men of Israel, each to his own tent, but the 300 remained. This is the original story of the 300. See? It came out of the Bible. Now, that same night, the Lord said to him, arise, go down against the city, for I have given it into your hands. But if you are afraid to go down on your own, send with you Purah, the servant. You two go down to the camp, and you will hear what they say. So Gideon, if you're scared, if you're still scared, I'm going to give you like an option, and you can choose to take that or not. You can phone a friend. It's up to you, okay? So, end of verse 11, he went down with Purah, his servant, down to the outpost of the army with his camp. So was Gideon afraid? Yes, he takes God up on his option. So he and his armor bearer go to the city, go to the Midianites, and in verse 12, the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the sons of the east were lying in the valley as numerous as locusts. Their camels were without number. Not just the people, but the camels were without number. That's a bad day, okay? That's a sign of strength, as numerous as the sand on the seashore. That's a lot of people, okay? 13, keep rolling.
When Gideon came, behold, a man was relating a dream to his friend, and he said, behold, I had a dream. A loaf of barley bread was tumbling into the camp of Midian, and it came to the tent and struck it so that it fell, and turned it upside down so that the tent lay flat.
So the Midianite tent or camp was destroyed by what? A rolling loaf of bread, right? Something small and insignificant. And Gideon went, that's us. We're the bread, right? His friend replied, this is nothing less than the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, the man of Israel. God has given Midian and all of the camp into his hands. So they go back, verse 16. Watch now Gideon lead in this moment. This is awesome. Watch what he does, 16 and following.
He divided the 300 men into three companies, and he put trumpets and empty pitchers into the hands of all of them.
What are trumpets, by the way? Shofar, right? It's a ram's horn, okay? So it's an instrument that would make a lot of noise. So you got 300 men with these loud instruments. And again, that's how they would start. Religious festivals, they were loud, and they were sometimes like the big boys. You can go buy them in Israel even today, and they're expensive, but they're loud and big, okay? So you can hear them. So 300 men with those, as well as what? Empty pitchers. What are pitchers made out of? Clay, right? So hardened clay. So they've got hardened clay pots and a shofar. These are their battle instruments. Okay, odd. Okay, keep rolling.
With torches inside the pitchers. He said to them, look at me and do likewise. And behold, when I come to the outskirts of the camp, do as I do.
Do as I do. Does this sound like the Gideon that we met last chapter? This is a different Gideon, right? This is a guy that's stepping up. He's scared, but he's leading through his fear, okay? When I and all who are with me blow the trumpet, you shall also blow your trumpets all around the camp and say, for the Lord and for Gideon, right? That's the first sign, by the way, you're like, for the Lord and for who? Like, how about just for the Lord? Like, can we stop there? It's just those parts where you're like, this doesn't sit right, okay? So, Gideon and the 100 men who were with him came to the outskirts of the camp, beginning with the middle watch. So, again, they divided their men now from 300 into 3 groups of 100, and they smashed the pitchers that were in their hands, okay? And they blew the trumpets in verse 19. What would that do? When you've surrounded the Midianite camp, and you're blowing the trumpets and breaking pots, and you've got torches with you. It's at night. Yeah, it sounds big. It looks big because they can't see you. They see torches, right? So the Midianites think, oh, man, we're surrounded. There's people here, there's people there, there's people here. They're all around us, and they're making a ton of noise, okay? Verse 20, keep rolling. So 21, what happens to the Midianites? Yeah, they wake up and they're in a sheer panic. Like, what's going on? And watch how this battle gets won. Keep rolling.
When they blew 300 trumpets, the Lord set the sword of one against another, even throughout the whole army. And the army fled as far as Bethshea toward Zariah, as far as the edge of Abel-Meholah by Tabbath.
All right, they're fleeing east. How do they die? Each other. Gideon's men are still standing up there with broken pitchers and a torch in their hand. And the Midianite army is just in full freak-out mode right now. And they're killing one another. And those that don't get killed by one another are fleeing out of Israel. Gideon and his men have done nothing in terms of battle. This is like Jericho all over again. March around the city again, and again, and then 6 times on the last day, and then blow the trumpet and watch God work. And this is exactly how this goes down. The men of Israel were summoned from Naphtali and Asher and Manasseh, and they pursued Midian. So they win the day, and God feigns strength in the midst of weakness, right? So it's a beautiful picture of how God can win a battle however they want, okay? Gideon now sends messengers throughout the hill country of Ephraim saying, come down against Midian and take the waters before them as far as Beth Barah and in the Jordan. So he now calls who? Verse 24. Ephraim. He hasn't called them yet. He hadn't asked them to come to the battle. We see in verse 35 of chapter 6, Manasseh, Zebulun, Naphtali. He calls these surrounding tribes, but he doesn't call Ephraim. Now he calls upon Ephraim to come fight. Okay, come take down. In verse 25, they captured the 2 leaders of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. And they killed Oreb on the rock of Oreb and Zeb in the winepress of Zeb. So the Ephraimites come to battle, and they fight now with Gideon. And they are the 2 that capture now the 2 Midianite kings, Oreb and Zeb. And they brought their heads to Gideon from across the Jordan River. Okay? So they fled to the east. The Ephraimites now come in. They destroy these 2 kings and kill them. And the battle has now been put to an end. Now, we don't have time to get through it today, but we're going to see the rest of the story tomorrow. And this is going to begin to raise up dissension and a division between the east side and the west side tribes a bit. Okay, so we'll pick up there in the Manana, chapter 8, verse 1 in the morning. All right? Blessings to you guys. Have a great day.